Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Reinforcing Infrastructure, IoT as a Catalyst for Resilience in Times of Uncertainty, hosted by IoT Solutions World Congress and the Industrial Internet Consortium. My name is Rich Karpinski, and I'm a Senior Research Analyst at 451 Research, now a part of S&P Global Market Intelligence. We're delighted to have you join us today, either back in your office or from the comfort of your home office. A special thank you to our sponsor for today's webinar, Generalitat de Catalunya, the Government of Catalonia, Ministry for Digital Policy and Public Administration. Before we get started, let's go over some quick housekeeping. We'll have ample time for questions today, and we'll try to answer questions as we move along throughout the panel discussion. You can submit your questions by typing them in to the tab on your dashboard at the right, I believe. You'll see a tab for questions. We'll also have two polls in the dashboard, and you can answer them at any time, and we'll discuss the results as we move along the way. This webinar will also be available as a video replay at the conclusion of the session if you have additional colleagues or you want to review it yourself, and that information will be emailed to you. And now it is a pleasure to introduce our panel for today's discussion. I'll ask everyone to please take a moment to introduce themselves, starting with Elisa. Elisa?
Thanks, Rich. So hi, everyone, and welcome also from my side. My name is Elisa Renka. I work for Siemens Smart Infrastructure, and I'm heading the Digital Market Development Team, or also known as Head of Smart Office Europe, so Office being one of the focus verticals. And basically, my role is to create value out of technology, out of IoT and other emerging technologies, and really focus on the, let's say, experience we can create with technologies. So happy to be here.
Great.
I guess I'm next, or yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Rich. My name is Roy Holstead. I'm part of the IoT team in Deloitte and in the Amsterdam firm. And I will sort of be covering the our smart building aspects, and I sit with the broader team, so I'm glad to be here as well.
Great. Ollie?
Hi, everyone. Welcome on my behalf as well. My name is Olli Kilpeläinen. I'm calling in from Espoo, Finland, where I work for Cocreation, and I'm working as a head of ecosystem program. That means that I'm working on IoT, digitalization, APIs, and finding partners who can help us innovate in the smart building domain. Very happy to be here.
Great. Matthew?
Hi there, I'm Matthew Marson. I'm head of smart places at WSP, based here in London, and I help our clients look at how they can get technology into the built environment.
Great. And finally, Eric, please.
Hey, thank you, Rich. Hey, it's Eric Zhang. I'm here from Shanghai, China. I'm part of, Wanke Future City Lab. So Future City Lab, we try to bring all the advanced available technology to China and convert to the city, make the Shanghai livable city and a resilient city. So I'm happy here.
Great. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. So let's get started. I wanted to kick off with some results, some survey results from some surveys we've been running at 451 Research. And I mean, I think they make it clear that we live in a changed world today. And we're going to be exploring some of those issues as we walk through our panel today. What does the future of the workplace look like in a post-COVID-19 world? To be fair, many of the changes we're going to talk about today have been in sort of in development for some time, but clearly they've been accelerated. And if you can look at some of the data I'm sharing here on the screen, I'll walk through it. You can get a sense of just how changed things are, not only today, but how they'll continue to be changed into the future. While we're clearly working under altered conditions today, things like work from home and social distancing and the use of PPE and masks, a third of the respondents to our survey expect things to remain that way into the future, with 14% expecting those changes to be permanent. So we're going to be working in this altered environment for quite some time. As far as work from home, which I assume many of us are doing today, Eric, we see in an office, some of us are working from home, as you can tell as well. That's also a drastic change. 80% of our survey respondents say they've instituted enhanced work from home policies through the pandemic thus far, with 2/3 of the respondents saying they're going to keep those in place in some shape or form moving forward. Again, a great change for the future. And as for physical environments, we'll be talking about those environments a lot today, whether they're offices or factories or warehouses. Our survey respondents expect those physical environments also to be adapting, and in particular shrinking, with roughly half of our survey respondents expecting at least a slight reduction in office size, and 1 in 5 anticipating their office to be at least 25% smaller in the future. Now, all of those add up to some significant changes and some significant things that we'll all have to adapt to as we move back into our offices and as we change the way we work in the future. As I mentioned, if you want to take a look at the poll results to the right, what we'll do, there's a poll about working conditions, and there's a poll about back to office and the degree to which projects, including IoT projects, are contributing to our back to the office. So please take a look at those as we walk through today's sessions and give us your responses, please. So let's jump in with the panel. So Elise, let's start with you. How do you feel IoT in particular can play a role in addressing some of the challenges we saw in that data? I mean, what experiences and trends are you seeing out there in the market today?
Thanks, Rich. So bridging nicely from the research results that you were elaborating on, really the future and the today of let's say the value that can be created by technology is really how can you create that value to humans, which means that in terms of IoT, in terms of any kind of intelligent technology, any kind of smart in a building, whatever that building is, it's really about connecting the people, so the users of that building, with the different spaces for the activities that they need, and then having that connection, that connectivity with the different data sources, whether that is building data, whether that is IoT data, whether it is any kind of external data, and pulling all that together to really create smart. So what I really see in the market is that this human centricity is not only a buzzword, but it's actually about the connectivity, not only on the technology side, but also from the human side of connecting the people, the vital human sensors, as I like to call them, in the space to really create intelligence and create smart. Now then, if we think about IoT specifically, we often see that used as, let's say, a tool or a vehicle to create transparency. So for example, I think space utilization is a great example of this. And I always challenge then the customers and the people I speak with that, okay, it's one thing to get this status quo and transparency, but then what? What do you do with that information? And for that, you need some kind of end user interface. So again, we come back to this human centricity. How can you drive behavior differently in the spaces in order to create more smart? So whether smart is in terms of agile or whether smart is in terms of reducing friction, you always need that kind of end user interface. And as the world stands today, that's often a mobile application. Then if we think about workplace experiences in general, usually it has been about this reducing friction, or then about creating moments of delight. So somehow creating positive impulses, especially when we think about office spaces. But now with the pandemic crisis at hand, we have all of a sudden seen this new trend emerging, which is safety. So currently the topic of how do we ensure safety, both from a physical standpoint or a psychological standpoint, how do we ensure safety compliance and adherence to rules and processes, has become vital. So I think, if we have been, let's say, focusing on experience before, we've just now added a new dimension of this experience factor, and how can we foster human centricity in the built environment. Very fascinating trend. I think it is there and here to stay, but hopefully not as such an urgent topic as now, as we are still in the eye of the crisis.
Great. If we could jump and take a look at our first poll, we can see that the majority of our respondents are expecting some altered working conditions through the rest of this year and into 2021, but not necessarily permanently. So at least I wonder if you could respond to those results from our audience, right? How do you think they should be thinking about those altered work environments, and what are you seeing among the customers that you're working with in terms of expectations?
So that's a very, very good question. I would always challenge that. What are altered conditions in a way? Because we talk about the new normal. So I think it's just a matter of repurposing the spaces that we use and kind of figuring out how do we operate under new kind of circumstances. And this uncertainty, I believe, is here to stay. This was let's say, a slap in the face for everyone with the pandemic, as a huge shift in terms of society, in terms of how we work, in terms of how we make business even. But I think this uncertainty is there to stay. So in terms of I wouldn't call them as altered conditions. I would more say that how can we be flexible and agile to meet whatever comes our way also in the future. And in that, technology plays a huge role, because, as said, it's the vehicle for transparency. It's the vehicle for driving change.
Yeah, excellent. So Ali, let me turn to you. And Lisa was talking about not only change and change from the outside, but the need to apply technology to change how our enterprises work. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how your company is leveraging technology how it's changed your company strategy, and what kinds of applications are you envisioning in the future in different industries, leveraging new technology, the access to the additional data about environments and people that we'll all have access to via IoT and other types of resources in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rick. So basically, you might recognize the KONE brand from elevators, escalators, building doors. And how is that then linked to IoT and this new normal? We like to think of ourselves as a people flow company, basically doing whatever it takes to help people move in and between buildings in the smoothest and safest way possible. And in order to do that, you of course need to understand the whole environment, the whole built environment, the users, the solutions, the operations, all of that, and how they interact within that building. And the equipment and services that KONE provides, basically, if they stop working, you will have a huge impact on the way society functions. And now in these exceptional times, very different times than we used to, KONE plays a rather vital role in keeping society running. And we are helping our customers basically to navigate and adjust to this new environment where digitalization plays a huge part. And we have been in this business for over 110 years, but we have never seen such a rapid change in our industry before. Digitalization is really seen everywhere, with the disruptions coming from technological side, the urbanization. And we are seeing that our customers, partners, and end users and personnel all are being digitally connected. By the way, you're switching the slides back and forth somehow there, but
yeah, I don't know why that's happening. Apologies.
No worries. But basically, like I said, we're really seeing the digitalization playing a big part here. And in order to address that, what we launched, for example, last year was our DX class elevators. Basically, the first elevators in the world that are digital and come with built-in connectivity and KONE digital platform. So in essence, we turned these heavy industrial machines into IoT devices. And at the same time, we also launched our application programming interfaces, APIs, as well as our ecosystem of partners who are creating further services into the smart building. And this has not been seen before in our industry. So we were the first ones to truly open up the APIs, give that access to the developers. And what this enables is that our customers, our partners, they can pull the data from our equipment. They can pull the data from our operations during these critical times to really innovate further and build further value in those business networks. And what's the point of this technology then? Is of course, we are trying to look at it from a customer perspective, people perspective, like you also put. So rather than looking at the technology alone, we are looking from customer side, how we can create further value. And there, how we see it is really co-creation, co-innovation. So we want to build that further value utilizing these technologies together with our customers, our ecosystem partners, and the end users. And in short, that's basically how we are building the resilience for our old business, traditional business, by utilizing IoT and data together.
Great. So Ali, I wonder if you could give us a couple of examples of how customers or partners are leveraging the APIs and the data?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we are looking these APIs and the data in our context from two different perspectives. So first of all, it's really about creating these further experiences and making people's life easier. A great example is that we have an API that basically allows you to use the elevators without touching them. Rather clear way, and there we can link further experiences by, for example, working together with robot companies who are doing delivery robots, for example, doing room service in hotels, which we already starting to see around the globe. On the other hand, we also have then APIs that really pull the data from our operations. So like I said, it's super important these situations to understand how the equipment is running, for example, and how we are maintaining them. So now we give that visibility by utilizing the data, giving that data access to the customer, so they have up-to-date understanding and real-time information what's happening with the equipment and with the operations on the field.
Great. Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's keep things moving. So Matthew, I'm gonna pass it to you. And can you give me a sense of, I think Elisa mentioned agility earlier. Can you give me a sense of what role agility plays in your perspective in terms of accelerating the types of changes we've been talking about today?
Yeah, I think for when you've got events like this, agility for me kind of equals resilience. And if I think about some of the technologies that make up the fourth industrial revolution, it provides us with an opportunity to change the sorts of global relationships and interdependencies that we have, some of the business models and the quality of the things that we can make. And I think the whole COVID-19 situation has really demonstrated to us that businesses, and in particular manufacturers, really struggle to respond and have the right kind of agility. Most of the automation technology that they use was defined in the third industrial revolution, and as such have really struggled to pivot. And really it's that need for agility that's kind of helped to write the business case for the adoption of this kind of 4IR tech. So the slide that you can see now is kind of like a splat, I call it, that I use with some of our clients to think about some of the technologies that have relevance in the built environment. So, give you a couple of examples. 3D printing means that manufacturers can change the recipe of the thing that they want to make, or working with cobots means that you can quickly make other types of stuff where machines are good at something and humans are better at others. Or maybe it's the use of something like a digital twin to go and rapidly test something in real time before having to make it in real life. Or maybe you want to take some of the trends that you've spotted from machine learning, combine that with other bits of design data and use artificial intelligence to make the thing that's going to be most relevant for the situation you're in. All of a sudden, these technologies help you to kind of pivot on the spot. And if, just think about some UK examples where, for instance, Dyson, who normally makes vacuums, was asked to make ventilators for the hospitals here. Having access to these technologies would probably mean they could have got those ventilators made quicker. So I suppose to answer your question, agility and technology, I think, are the things that are going to differentiate businesses, manufacturers, and cities going forward.
Yeah, do you have some examples, perhaps from some customers you've worked with, in terms of this dynamic being in play in the real world?
Yeah, I've been really fortunate enough to work on a scheme out in Saudi Arabia where we're designing a kind of first of its kind fourth industrial revolution city. The whole idea is that this place wants to be the kind of working manufacturing hub of the area that it's in. And we've had to think about how can the buildings or the port in this place go one day from serving, say, batteries from an electric car to 3D printing some organs to making iPhone 22, for instance, and all of the necessary bits of technology in the stack that's needed to pull that off. And I think we're often presented with really nice, simple architecture diagrams. We've got some devices that talk across 5G that go to a bit of edge processing, and then there's an application. But if you actually look at all the different parts of the city, you end up with this big kind of spaghetti diagram, and complexity is just increasing. So as well as it's good for me to sit and go, look at my fancy splat diagram, technology is wonderful. I think it's going to give us a headache in order to get there. But the promises that it offers probably means it's worthwhile.
Okay, excellent. We'll talk a little bit more about the promise versus the headache later on as a group. I think that's an interesting topic, obviously. But let's keep things moving. So Roy, I'm going to turn to you. You work in what some have deemed to be a smart building. I wonder if you can share some examples from your experience that sort of relate to the things we're talking about today.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. I think the interesting key aspect here is to take. I'll just sort of take a step back. What your examples have been showing on the poll research was very, very interesting, because what we tend to see is a sort of a changed landscape where a lot of businesses will actually ask themselves, do we need such large offices going forward? We've seen that a lot of the experimentation of working with home, albeit with the constraints and the issues that we've had, has been a big challenge. But at the same time, it has worked. And the interesting aspect will be definitely going forward is for companies to have offices or buildings that are not only connected but smart. And we need to, and to have that, we need to sort of be able to leverage the data. So if I take an example where we can use a 7-story building right now and be able to sort of downscale rapidly, because we can see how many people are actually in the office or using the office spaces. This is going to be very interesting also in the concept of be able to sort of decrease rent, for example, or increase rent based on capacity. And just to sort of make an example, I was talking with some friends over a couple of days ago, and we're sort of kind of comparing and talking about, okay, so how's this experience going of returning to the office, right? And it was funny because a lot of them had reports where the offices had actually opened up, albeit 50% of capacity or whatnot. And when they opened up the 50% capacity, there were actually 10% people actually showing up into the office. So it's actually people are actually having a preference of working from home, because think about the impact and what the impact of future mobility will have, right? So think about the municipalities, the decisions around public transport they will need to sort of kind of take, the time and the commute that people take. So we really need to rethink the office. And I think also for us in Deloitte at the Edge, how we kind of leverage the space, use it in a smart and effective manner, will be kind of key. And what we have here is all too often is the ideal view is the top of the pyramid, right? How do we move from the baseline where we have the majority of what we deem connected buildings to that upper tip, and that will give us the possibility, for example, of using and leveraging information where we can sort of downscale, use alternative renting models, leasing models, and so forth. Once we manage to leverage that information and build it going forward, so. All in all, I think it's exciting times ahead, because it'll pose new challenges. But with technology and flexibility, which is sort of the kind of key takeaways that I take out of this panel, that we'll be able to sort of kind of leverage going forward. So.
Excellent. So something you said struck me, this idea of a connected building versus a smart building. I think sometimes we think about IoT or we think about smart manufacturing and we don't sort of initially think that this has been happening for decades in many aspects, right? It's just the latest evolution. So how would you differentiate between yesterday's connected building and tomorrow's smart building? What's the difference, and how does it benefit the enterprise?
Well, it's basically really moving from just collecting data and information to actually leveraging and use it to augment and make proper decisions, right? What I was telling you before with the example about downscaling or upscaling, for example, the office spaces, and be able to sort of kind of rent, pay as you go model, for example, right? I'm going to need X amount of floors, or I'm going to need X amount of desks or spaces, right? We could get to that model going forward. That's the difference where today a lot of us are, and it it can be cross industry, right? Because when we talk about building, what is a building? It can be a hospital, it can be a station, it can be obviously office spaces. But the key important thing here is to sort of really make use of that data, trigger actions, and use that information to sort of make business decisions that have an impact going forward. So that's very, very important. And I think see that as key differentiator of, you know, how we perceive today and what's the future of it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So, Eric, I'm going to turn to you. You know, China has an increasingly mature digital infrastructure and population. So maybe you can share with us where you see builders in China, in particular, positioning themselves on that scale that Roy just mentioned, from connected to smart.
Sure. You know, I always wondering, you know, when I watched the movie from the World War II, I always wondering and always thinking how, you know, like the city like Amsterdam, like London, rebuild so quickly after the war. Mm-hmm. So every time I visit Europe, I try to grab some, you know, expert, professor, and builder to ask them how the infrastructure so important. Like, you know, last year I visit, you know, Amsterdam. I talked to, you know, Roy as well. I say, you know, how you connect, you know, the building together. Back to China, you know, actually we invested a lot of money for smart city initiative, you know, back to 2000. But you can see after during the, you know, coronavirus in, you know, January, so we back to the human force managed community. All the smart city initiative didn't respond anything in the very beginning. Then sooner, you know, people use some WeChat, you know, some, you know, like cell phone trace your, you know, routine to try to, you know, separate, maybe to try to group people, positive and negative. But it's not a smart. It's not like smart city or smart buildings. So that's why, you know, as a builder or like, you know, as a, you know, urban developer, we always thinking what will be the smart way to development some public, you know, service circle. So in this PowerPoint, it's just like the thinking. The thinking is, you know, how we can leverage, you know, the density and the efficiency, the size, or, you know, like the you know, the to make people living. So you think about it, you know, we always thinking, you know, as a builder, as an urban developer, we have to make, you know, the building connected together, but we have to make the, you know, the group of building, they can be separate each other as well, to make more road, more street for the walking people, for the pedestrians. In the other hand, we have to think about it, how to use the, you know, some hub to, you know, concentrate, to either concentrate hub, try to get people together, then distribute them quickly as soon as possible. Thirdly, you know, like, you know, in the very beginning, I put a, you know, a face mask. Although right now it's like almost a 40, you know, degree central high. So I still, you know, wear, you know, face masks. I don't know who is the positive people, who is the negative people, or somebody, you know, they, you know, this they you know, present as a negative, but maybe they carry, you know, virus. So that's why I'm, you know, during this conference, I would like to, you know, bring my first question, maybe make other people thinking, or, you know, my panelists, you know, you guys like, you know, Siemens, like a tech company, Kong, you know, like Deloitte, you are the high tech companies. You supposed to, you know, put some solution for my, you know, issues, but maybe we can work together. We can, me as, you know, as a urban developer, I can give you guys, you know, like the scenario what's the solution we need, but maybe you can work together to build the real, smart city, smart buildings to prevent the future, pandemic, like coronavirus, maybe some other virus. If we move my next page, I'm thinking the always, I got a lot of, like a proposal from partners, from like a solution provider. They always tell me for the digital twin. But from my understanding, digital twin is not easy in urban development business. I work on the Future City initiative for almost 2 years. My challenge, I have a lot of great idea. I can, share my idea, my concept to everybody. But when I back to Shanghai, when I do some, like in-house practice, in-house execution, I feel a lot of things need to figure out. For example, how the underground smart infrastructure to be connected with the ground. Then the ground, how to connect with the building. Then the building, how to connect with the, like the digital. So people can easily to tell me, it's easier to put all the layer together like my, semi, I can say, semi pretty, PowerPoint. But for my challenge, for my thinking, I know if we can successful, execute everything, on ground, they will bring the social benefit to make people feel safe. For example, when I walk in a building, I can see or I can, turn on my apps. I know the building is green or yellow or red. If it's green, means there is no worries, the air is fresh, and also the system is like work very well, so I can free to get in. I will feel very comfortable. So meanwhile, when people know everybody is safe in a building, in a community, or in a like a system, or in a future city, like in like an urban village thing, then the economic benefit will be significant, to be increased. So people, the efficiency, the productive will be very good. In return, as a urban developer, we can have a lot, like return for the, investment. Definitely, we can, put all the power, all the, like the thinker together. That's what I thought.
Great, Eric. Thank you very much. And so it's great to have an end user here. And so let's use Eric's conversation to dovetail into some open discussion. And his some of the points he brought up dovetails with some questions we've received from the audience. So we're going to go through some audience questions. Please submit them in the dashboard if you have any questions out there, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Eric was talking about ways of working with partners and providers and vendors. And there's a question in our dashboard around co-creation and how you all work with customers to define use cases, to define deployments, because there are so many industries, so many possible use cases. I wonder if we could open up all of the panelists' mics if we could. And I want to start with Elisa, though, and say, at Siemens, how are you working with customers to define what's possible, but also what makes sense for them in this world?
Yeah, so we do these kind of co-creation or co-ideation or co-value capture assignments a lot. And I think really the key is proof of value over proof of technical concept. I think this is a mindset shift that we just need to have, especially in our industry, which has been, let's say, a little bit traditional, the built environment. And we need to kind of shift away from thinking, oh, what can we connect and what can we do? Like Roy was explaining, end up with a dump of data and then, hype over that. And instead think about the proof of value. So how can we create value in the context of this building, this organization, this geography, this culture, many different dimensions that come into play, but really start from the value, then move to the technology solutions that could enable that value. So, I think that's great that we are already entering this co-creation phase also in our industry, but I think we still have a bit more to go to focus on the actual value instead of just the technology.
Yeah, Roy, I wonder if you could address this. Obviously, you work with clients from the bottom up, right, from the first day to the deployment, and work in sort of helping them understand what's possible, right? So we hear again and again that it's very challenging around IoT projects to understand the ROI, to find the right KPIs to track. They're very complex projects, right? So how do you help them ensure that they're looking at projects in the right way and they're measuring success and then can move from a proof of concept into a broad scale deployment?
Yes, thank you, Rich. So just to sort of a bit chime into what Lisa was saying, I think she was kind of spot on. What we tend to see is customers want to sort of kind of validate, test out assumptions, because there's no one size fits all. There's always a degree of customization needed for specific solutions, and what you tend to do is really try and sit down and define what the business value is. Technology is a means of an end, and there's a big hype around IoT, a lot of buzzwords going on. But I think the real, and if we take back the pyramid shape that I had, was the real challenge is how do you move out from that bottom layer, which makes it all connected, and it's fine, it's all connected. But if you don't make sense of with what you got, the technology in place, the data sets that you have in place, it's difficult to sort of make sense out of it. And obviously Eric, for example, pointed out very nicely his challenge, and it's very interesting to see it also from a different cultural spectrum as well, with the Chinese market. So what we do is really try and sort of build up that proof of value already at a prototype level, or a POC, if you will, and then try and sort of visualize how it can make an impact in the scale up of it. You really have to sort of kind of try and envision what's that North Star vision, and then build up towards it. So a lot of rolling up our sleeves and getting our hands dirty and trying to sort of experiment, having fun obviously at the same time, but then ultimately trying to sort of kind of design, okay, how do we move from that prototype level to a full-blown scale up. That's what's up.
Yeah, I think I'm a lot more skeptical than you are, Roy, on this. I think co-creation is used as a term to mask the fact I expect you to customize it to me for free. Particularly in the property sector, I think there's a lot of, oh yes, we'll co-create it with you, but I expect your off-the-shelf solution, which you're giving me off-the-shelf pricing for, to be bespoke entirely to my building and to my needs. And I think property people quite conveniently use their lack of understanding in digital to twist you where it hurts.
There is a truth to that. You could also leverage the fact that what you could sort of build up is using. There's a lot of good technology out there, by the way, and what you do if you take you could either take it from an industry level where you come up and with a solution and try to adapt it to the specific needs, but then there is that level. Okay, every new type of solution also comes up with brings out new questions, new challenges. They address them, and I think to your point, yes, but at the same time you could use them, leverage them a bit as accelerators to that end goal, rather than sort of completely starting from scratch. So no, there is obviously I agree. There's a point to what you're saying, but I wouldn't just see it as black or white. I see it as also a good opportunity, moderated and managed appropriately to kind of get to an end goal. I think that's okay.
Great.
Yeah, I would love to comment. It goes a bit both ways, right? But when you talk about technology, like I keep talking about APIs and things like that, these are in a way open-ended things. So these generate value depending on what the customer wants to do with them. That's in a way why I like what we are doing, or what I'm doing in my program, is exactly that we have enablers for you, and with the customers we can figure out what are the most important pain points we can address, and then we can pull in we can pull in data, we can pull in IoT devices, pull in other companies, partners, and that in a way, in my opinion, it is still co-creating, definitely, and it's combining in a way on-the-shelf products with something new that you can modify.
Okay, I'm going to step out because you guys are anticipating my question flow perfectly. I was going to go boom, 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 and you did it. So let me follow though with Eric though. So Eric, are you happy with what you've heard from some technology partners and consultants and SIs on in these preceding statements? Right? Does that address some of the concerns you have as a builder? Their approaches to gaining value from these projects. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, while really appreciate everybody still try to give me some advice and answers, and yeah, you guys bring some a lot of expertise and your experience to me, so really appreciate. But I'm wondering, for IoT, if we will try to discuss IoT at a catalyst for resilience, for the uncertainty. So I have another question. Maybe as a user, I like you guys give me some input. If in a building we already have a lot of IoT, I think most of you visit China already. In China, in all the street, all the community, all like the industry park, we put 1,000, millions, like surveillance cameras. So we can treat the camera as IoT. We have cameras, we have small site, we have like air conditioning, air pollution sensors. So when we have all the IoT ready, so what will be the next solution? Maybe you give me some input. We can manage all the IoT better to fix the uncertainty to some like a semi-certainty. Thank you.
Yeah, so if I can rephrase the question and I'll route it a bit, right? So you begin to have IoT devices, you have a tremendous amount of data, much of it new and much of it overwhelming. So what do you do with it from both a process point of view and a technology point of view? So let's start with Elisa. What's that next step once you've begun collecting all of this building data?
So I already cringe here because I wouldn't start with collecting the data. I wouldn't start with cramming infrastructure with data sources or sensors. But I know that is what in practice is being done a lot. So no criticism, just a tiny cringe. But so if you have chosen to do that or take that path, then I think again you need to go back to the drawing board as to like what do I want to achieve, and out of all the technology that I have deployed and all of the data that I have available, what can then enable the use cases and the value that I want to achieve. So it starts with really the value and the use case. What's the pain point currently that can be alleviated? What's the friction we can reduce? What's the delight we can create? Or what's the safety? And kind of go back to those thoughts, and then see what do you have at hand, and maybe there's even additional technology that might be needed. Hopefully not. Hopefully you already have all that technology data available, and all you need to do is pull it together and make use of it, and maybe cross-pollinate a little bit of the data between systems. But really, again, start with the value. Start with what do you want to achieve? What would make lives better in that certain type of building or certain infrastructure?
Yeah, fair enough. Anyone else like to discuss the sort of which comes first, the data or the value, the data or the use case?
Just a point on Elise's, just to sort of kind of close off on that. In the end, it's really about customer centricity, right? So it's really about who is the user. What we tend to do is we get, amazed and startled by all of the tech, but we tend to sort of forget at times, okay, who are we really engaging, right? Is it the facility manager? So for example, in the context of smart building, are we talking about the facility manager? Is it the employees? Is it the tenants? It's really, once you start addressing those pain points and those challenges, you can then sort of build up the whole ecosystem around there. So the example I made before about the ability of downscaling and upscaling, for example, the floors, and how you could sort of kind of rent them out on demand. Now that's a challenge that, for example, a lot of real estate developers have right now, and will have, I foresee, in the very near future, right? Because if this trend goes on and suddenly people start realizing, hey, I can work comfortably from home, then I need that intelligence to be able to downscale without it becoming a bloodbath for me. So I need to sort of kind of make sure that I can adapt, and so what we try to sort of define and design is really key here. We need to design things and solutions that add business value around specific users and customers and personas, if you will.
Yeah, let's talk about the stakeholder question, right? Because it's been brought up a few times. There are many stakeholders in many use cases. Many of them are new. If you look at a smart building, you have a developer like Eric, but you also have HR that maybe never thought about real estate groups, the end user, right? All of these folks. I'll start with Matthew, maybe in more of an industrial environment, if I'm understanding your focus, but also buildings, right? You have the IT department, the operations department, a lot of stakeholders. So how do you make sure that all of their interests are represented and the value that they can bring to defining a use case or a need is properly represented? And how do you take all of those inputs and do something useful with them, right?
Yeah, so from the work that we do at WSP, one of the first things that I like to kick off with is an experience design, where we're banned from talking about technology, and instead we tried to get all of those different stakeholders around a table to work out what it is that they're wanting to do and how they see like the value of doing a smart place. So let's take a couple of examples. You've probably got like your FM department that want all of the data they could possibly think of to come from the building management system so that they can do the analytics across the heating, ventilation and air conditioning. They probably want ways to predict when things are going to fail and ultimately look at reducing the energy bill. But for somebody in, say, like strategy and planning or in the sustainability departments, beyond the kind of technical, that helps to weave a story as part of what the company's doing for the environment, for instance, and the kind of things that they can go out there and talk about what they're doing as an organization. Or perhaps I think one of the big ones that HR is particularly focused on is some of the health and well-being and kind of proving that the workplace is a good and healthy place to be, particularly at the moment. A lot of the data that is used for energy you can use as compliance around the number of air changes an hour that you're doing, the amount of CO2 that you're removing from the space. So often, although we probably, we would probably only talk to the technical people in the kind of old world of design for smart buildings, actually just thinking about the other side of the same data often has value for everyone.
If I can extend on that a tiny bit, so exactly, I fully agree. Elisa was talking about you need to understand the user, you need to understand the pain points, same for you, designing for the different users. On the other hand, now that we are building these technologies and we are building the smart building, connecting those data points, we have talking elevators and we have smart office solutions, and we have the baseline. So now in a way, because of this IoT digitalization, it is easier now to build the value for those new user groups, like you were also saying. So now it's much easier to jump when the situation is changing rapidly, like this spring we all saw. So then you need to be able to very quickly utilize the data, the technology, and address it to different use cases. I think that's in a way the beauty of building exactly resilience with IoT, with data, and all this digital efforts.
Yeah. Okay. Let me take a few questions from the audience. So there have been some questions around data security and data privacy. So we've talked a lot about enabling technologies and the value that will be delivered, but clearly, whether it's in an industrial environment or in a building environment, you open up all these endpoints, there's a vast security issues, right, that can counter all the value you've just gained, right? So I wonder, let me start with Eric, and then I'd be happy to hear from some of the providers talking about customers and their experiences. But Eric, how do you think about security challenges in particular, right, in these buildings or cities that are now opening up all of these data endpoints? What has been your experience?
Yeah, well, for particularly in China, data is rather, is very restricted by the government and also by, the government authority. So that means, hardly to get the data, from, the government. So, but as a builder, when they try to, install some IoT or sensors, so we have to, report the data to, the government authority, and maybe we need to get, the data to be clean for the, safety data. We call the safety data. But if when it's called safety data, that means probably not being for us to do some business related, intelligence related analysis for our business development. Secondly, during the coronavirus season, we put a lot of surveillance cameras, but to like a face recognition, we have like a small side to monitor the the temperature. But this kind of data also we need to collect it and report to the authority as well. So we really want to to monitor and also to test what will be the data or be the the driver when the building they have the the concentration about the virus. What is the the initiative make the the environment is like virus positive or negative. Thirdly, we try to see how we can get the data in structure, like as Alisa said, is structured data, clean data, and not against like privacy from the human being. Try to make our IoT usable for us as a developer, and also usable for our property management people as well. So data security right now is still like it's like in my opinion it's like a green area. So no, we cannot say white or black, but we as a respect urban developer in China, we do not want to cross any line if the data security not clear for us to use for any business intelligence related activity.
Great. Alisa, can you give us maybe a people-centric view of data security and privacy within these environments? What should be the expectations? What are the trade-offs? How do you view that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the pandemic has also shifted maybe mindsets a little bit on that topic, where we were previously very privacy concerned. And again, I think it's more of this personal emotion of concern instead of actual compliance to regulation. I think the compliance part is quite nicely now established itself, at least in the European front with GDPR and all that. But the concern has remained. Now, when we see this, let's say, crisis that we are living through, all of a sudden safety becomes an overriding concern over privacy. And we see things like these contagion mitigation apps and all these kind of things where you share your data openly become more and more popular. So it's funny to see the human psychology in effect here, that first you might be quite resistant, but then when a bigger threat comes, fear overrides a lot of other emotions. And I think this has happened with the notion of privacy. Having said that, I think it's always really important when any kind of technology is deployed in a building where there are humans in there, to take care that this change management in terms of kind of the concerns that the users and the people in that built environment might have are addressed properly. So it's really a change management initiative more than a technology deployment initiative when it's done right. And when it's done right, then you make sure that you don't, let's say, jeopardize ruining all the good intentions that you had from value creation perspective, because all the value is overridden by this concern of privacy or any other concern.
Yeah, we've got some excellent questions in the dashboard, so I want to hit one of them. Question about new services, business models, I think opportunities, right, due to smart buildings. Clearly, Ollie is building a new opportunity around a physical product, but now the digital platform. Also, Roy, I wonder if you might address it from more of a broad perspective. What's new in terms of opportunities, new markets, new business models, do you think?
Yeah, if I start quickly, like I mentioned, exactly, we are very much known for shipping this heavy equipment and maintaining them. That's the core business. But now now we can really see that because of the smart building space, because of the digitalization, we can really try to tap into new areas as well. So like I said in the beginning, we are no longer just looking at going up and down in the building, but everything that relates to moving around. What is the flow of people? That even relates to what Eric was asking about, being prepared for the future. So if you understand how people are moving, with privacy in mind, of course, then you can really start planning better. You can be prepared for the next problem. You can be prepared when the HR is asking how to optimize the space usage. So in a way, you can link many things together by extending our physical products with the digital services. And that's, of course, what we are doing as a company. And I see that happening, of course, in many other industries similar.
Yeah, Roy, I wonder if you could take that physical product and a digital service is an interesting business model of the future, right? Are you seeing that other opportunities, other sectors?
Well, definitely, as I mentioned, I mean, if you take into consideration, the building segments, ranging from offices to hospital, all have specific use case needs, right? Take for example, hospitals with being able to sort of kind of track assets within, costly assets within the hospital space, right? There's tons of those use cases that you have to take into consideration, and there's, for example, in office space, and Lisa knows very well around, desk finding, and more than ever now today with the whole COVID and pandemic situation, you want to be able to sort of kind of see in real time what desks you can use, provided you go to the office, obviously. But what desks you can use, and how many people are in the elevator, for example, and is the distance being respected, and a lot of compliance issues that you need to sort of take into consideration, not just for not just for the COVID situation, but this is setting for first step into sort of this change that is going on, and this has just accelerated ideas, as you mentioned when we started off this webinar, that were already kind of brewing, but nobody really had the kind of courage to take the first step on, and now everybody's scrambling and needs to take action, because you need to make the office space compliant. But rather than responding immediately to a peril, why not prepare for the future? And that's something that we're seeing now grow more and more. Whether it's COVID today or other situations which will arise tomorrow, you need that agility and flexibility. As I said also before with the example with floors, you need to be able to sort of scale up and scale down.
Yeah, I think because we've hit the top of the hour, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and let's wrap up. I wanted to give maybe a closing thought to Elisa, who's helped sponsor this section or this session and organize it a bit. At least have some thoughts maybe we can end on, and thank you to all our panelists, and thank you to the audience as well. But let's end with that.
So maybe my closing 2 seconds are that think of about shifting from Internet of Things into Internet of Experiences. So really put the experience and the human first in whatever you design and decide to go with. Make sure that it's secure. Read the chat. There's nice chatting on the security topic if you haven't done that yet. And then the ROI topics are really think about the return on investment from all dimensions, also the human related dimension, and also the risk of if you don't act, if you don't deploy technology, what will happen? I mean, I think we all realized those who had invested in smart technology before the pandemic had means and the flexibility to act easier. So these would be my last 2 seconds of wisdom, I hope.
With that, let us conclude our presentation for today. Thanks again so much for the audience for joining us. Many thanks to the panelists. Thanks again to the Generalitat de Catalonia, the Government of Catalonia, Ministry for Digital Policy and Public Administration for sponsoring this session. To our audience, please feel free to reach out to any of our speakers on LinkedIn or Twitter if you have additional questions. Again, thank you very much, and stay well in your day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.